Welcome to Chapter 3B. We're going to look at the various types of educational environments that kids can find themselves in today. We're going to look at charter schools and for-profit schools, alternative schools, virtual schools, and homeschooling. Big array of ways that students can learn today. And at the end of the session, we're going to ask that you write on the question, can choice lead the way to school reform? You can define choice by putting in charter schools or alternative schools, virtual schools, or even home schools. Whatever you choose could replace that word choice. Also, in another session, we'll look at vouchers. Vouchers are ways, in fact, they're certificates issued by the state, which would allow a parent to apply towards a tuition towards any of these types of schools. And it's a hotly debated issue, and the states has been implemented in. Some parents say they have the right to decide where their kids attend school, and they ought to use taxpayer money to be able to do that. Parents that send their kids to private schools, they pay for their education twice, they would claim, because they pay taxes and then they also have to pay to educate your child at that school. So big arguments on both sides. The people that usually oppose school vouchers claim that the voucher system will take money away from the public schools that desperately need it. They say that it would blur the lines between the separation of church and state, because many of the vouchers could go to the religious schools, and it would foster a school system that was more elitist, where not every kid would benefit equally, and perhaps divide America even more. So the pros and cons of the school voucher system is another issue we'll look at in another section. Well, in these types of schools that are rising today, the concept prevalent in all of them is a new paradigm. Should the kid fit the school, or should the school fit the kid?
Once upon a time, the animals decided that they must do something heroic to meet the problems of a new world. So they organized a school. They adopted an activity curriculum consisting of running, climbing, swimming, and flying. To make it easier to administer, all animals took all the subjects. The duck was excellent in swimming, better in fact than his instructor, and made excellent grades in flying, but he was very poor in running. Since he was low in running, he had to stay after school and also drop swimming to practice running. This was kept up until his web feet were badly worn, and then he was only average in swimming. But average was acceptable in school, so nobody worried about it except the duck. The rabbit started at the top of his class in running, but had a nervous breakdown because of so much makeup in swimming. The squirrel was excellent in climbing, until he developed frustrations in the flying class, where the teacher made him start from the ground up instead of from the treetop down. He also developed Charlie horses from overexertion, and he got a C in climbing and a D in running. The eagle was a problem child and had to be disciplined severely. In climbing class, he beat all of the others to the top of the tree, but insisted on using his own way of getting there. At the end of the year, an abnormal eel that could swim exceedingly well and also could run, climb, and fly a little had the highest average and was valedictorian. The prairie dogs stayed out of school and fought the tax levy because the administration would not add digging and burrowing to the curriculum. They apprenticed their children to the badger and later joined the groundhogs and gophers to start a successful private school.
Well, let's look at how these schools are being fashioned to maybe meet more of the needs of children. We're again look at the charter schools that are, especially in Kansas, alternative schools, virtual and home schools. We have a lot of choices, believe it or not, as parents and as students to attend different systems. We have a public choice with charter and magnet schools, and alternative schools. You have private choices. The Catholic school system has always been a tremendously strong school system. In fact, we have a Quaker school too in the state of Kansas. And then the for-profit is finding a place in especially the urban education scene. Homeschooling is the fastest growing way of educating kids in America today, with almost nearly 2 million children being educated at home. And then, of course, the virtual schools. We have a number of virtual schools in Kansas, especially on the secondary level, that students can get a diploma from and attend. So a lot of alternatives. Let's look at a couple. Well, starting with the charter schools, Nelson Smith, the president of the National Alliance for Charter Schools, says that charter schools are giving administrators the freedom to innovate, and teachers the ability to be creative, and parents the chance to be involved, and the students the opportunity to learn by creating a partnership that leads to improved student learning. All of these entities are involved in that school, in charter schools. There is a big debate on charter schools. Let's look at the one in Kansas City, Kansas, with a recent news broadcast.
Well, charter schools versus public schools. Right now, charter schools are all the rage in Kansas City. When the Kaufman Charter School opens this fall, there will be 28 charter schools in Kansas City. But are charters living up to their promise of a more focused education? Beth Vaughn has some answers.
It wasn't until she left traditional public schools that Kimberly Baker made the honor roll.
If the teacher's not teaching you to the best of their abilities and trying to make sure you get it, then you're not gonna succeed.
Enrolled now at Benjamin Danaker, a charter academy her mother says has made all the difference.
Here is different. They have, space, and then they're allowed to ask questions.
A third of all students receiving public education in Kansas City have chosen charter too. But a recent study done by the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools tells a very different story.
The charter spectrum resembles the district spectrum in some regards.
Out of 27 charter schools in Kansas City, only 3 met state standards in math and communications. And in math, on average, Kansas City public school students outperformed 17 charter schools, even though both fell short of state standards.
Different schools offer different things for different kids, but all schools should be offering a pretty clear expectation of academic performance.
But there's a catch, according to Superintendent Marion Brown.
What people aren't realizing is that we're educating the same children,
many of whom are behind.
If anyone could identify the one thing that made one school great versus another school, they'd have the golden ticket, I think, in education right now.
A golden ticket that could answer the newest question in education, charter or public. Beth Vaughn, NBC Action News.
Now, the study recommends that charter schools that chronically do not meet state standards be closed, a decision the state has no control over.
Well, let's look at the history and some of the aspects of charter schools in various states. We actually saw the first charter school established in 1991 after Philadelphia started looking at the concept of school within schools. President Clinton, as he came to office, wanted and set a goal of 3,000 charter schools by the year 2000. President Bush continued that emphasis to bring various competition to the public school scene through No Child Left Behind. In 1994, the U.S. Department of Education started to provide the grant money to support charter schools, and now today we're seeing a vast array of individuals becoming involved in developing and asking for charters to develop schools in local communities, as you saw with the Kaufman Foundation in Kansas City. There are 2 key concepts that we find in a charter school. One, it should be innovative. trying some new or original approaches to teaching. It's simply not the same old thing for students. And secondly, it has an autonomous structure. That is, it's a self-governing entity, and it's an independent organization from the local school board. It can be structured in any way that the charter proposes and run in any way. And the charter asks for different variations over the state statutes, and they replace them with their innovative ideas. In Kansas, we have a number of charters operating. Our legislation allows still the local Board of Education to approve the chartering authority. It still has to go through the local Board of Education. Our charters can actually be any new started school or converted public school, but it's not yet extended to home-based learning environments. The term of the charter is usually for 3 years, and it's reviewed by the State Board of Education and approved by the State Board of Education. There is a waiver from most state and district educational laws in many states, but here your waivers, your exemptions have to be specified in the charter, and the replacements identified. What will replace the particular exemption that you're asking for? Again, a lot of the same policies are followed. You must provide transportation for students. You must provide a free and reduced lunch program, and the like. The students that go to the charter schools, it's an open enrollment. That is, any child that wants to go can go. They can't just choose any person that they like. There has to be a racial and social balance in the state of Kansas, but they can set enrollment requirements, and that's specified in the charter itself. Typically, when you have an over-enrollment, you have a lottery, as you saw in the movie Waiting for Superman. The lottery can be instituted in the state of Kansas if there are too many people asking to get in at school. Funding is the estimated portions around $5,700, about the extent that is paid to public schools. It does go through in the state of Kansas through the local school board, and the funds are made available through the district school system to that charter school. Teachers remain covered in the state of Kansas with district bargaining agreements. Certifications are required unless it's asked to be waived in the charter. We have in Kansas City a number of schools. The ones that are identified here on this list is some of the different types of charter schools that we found approved by the State Board of Education. We even have one in Erie locally, Parsons. Pittsburgh High actually had one school to work program for a while. Well, alternative schools. Look at the magnet schools that were established in Kansas City, Missouri, back decades ago to answer some of the questions about desegregation. We found their answer was with different magnet schools, same concept. There are various schools up there now that focus on different curricula. For example, if you like discovery learning, you have several schools that primarily teach towards experimentation. Science is a major focus. You have Afro-centered schools for those who center on the African history and culture and music. Environmental sciences are found at one of the schools. Foreign language, you have the Foreign Language Academy. You have Lincoln College Prep. In fact, you got a middle school, a high school there for college prep focus. The Montessori method was found in several schools, Border Star and the like. Visual and Performing Arts at Longfellow and KC Middle School of the Arts. So you had, and vocational education, and the Zoo Academy I found was interesting, Southeast Zoo Academy. So the concept of having a focus was very, very prevalent in the school systems in Kansas City, Missouri. Down here locally, we have the Cornerstone Alternative Charter School. It's found in Galena. It's in an old gas station right on Main Street. I got the tour of that. It's a really neat place. One of the first in southeast Kansas. And one of the nationally known one is also called Cornerstone Achievement Academy. It's found in Milwaukee. But primarily those are charter schools that are alternative schools for kids at risk, and they have a computerized curriculum that accelerates the learning so they can graduate if they've been behind on time. The Crawford County Learning Center on Broadway in Pittsburg, Kansas is also a center for learning that's alternative. It's sponsored by a number of the local school systems there, and it's a performance-based diploma program, almost all computerized, but they're open at different times, and different kids can come at different times. Low class counts, sometimes working one-on-one, offering students, again, chances to catch up in an accelerated curriculum. Our Catholic schools have always been a prominent alternative to education. All over America, you'll find some very strong Catholic schools. In Pittsburgh area, of course, we have St. Mary's, Colgan. They are accredited by the state of Kansas. They typically have about approaching 600 students in those schools, about 40 teachers. All of them are certified, and they have a very religious curriculum. And you see their mission statement's a little bit different than a public school system. The Covenant Harvest Church is also a church found in Pittsburgh. We find there they have over 30 teachers. Not all of them certified, but they are preparing kids in K through 12 for a religious background, but also to go on to college. And we've had a number of those graduates attend Pittsburgh State and graduate from here. The Quaker schools are spread throughout America. We find that we have one in Kansas. It's the Wichita Friends School. It's a K through 6 day school there in Wichita, and it is accredited by the state of Kansas. It has all state certified teachers. So it's a kindergarten through 6th grade. So it limits its class size to 20, and it's a child-focused religious curriculum. So we have a wide variety of schools, alternative ways of educating kids, even in the state of Kansas. We also have some very strong virtual schools. Well, what are virtual schools?
The world is changing around us. Online public schools represent an evolution in the way that education works that just makes sense for the 21st century.
I taught in the Chicago public schools for 20 years, a principal in the Chicago public schools for 9 years, and I was also a principal in Chicago South suburban districts for 3 years. I made a switch from traditional public education to online learning because I saw results. I saw the enthusiasm in children's faces. I saw the increase in test scores. I saw families getting actively involved. I saw parents learning while their children were learning. I just saw a blossoming of kids' excitement for education.
Can you see how scale drawings could be applied to real life? Oh, really? So your uncle is an architect?
It was actually brought to my attention by students and parents. Such things as, this is the most I've ever talked to my child's teacher. These are the best experiences my child has had. I feel like my teacher cares about me.
My older child, Bryce, was in 2nd grade. And we were finding the regular school, though it's a great school district, loved the teachers, it just wasn't offering enough. They didn't offer any history and science, 2 of his great loves. We both believe very strongly in the public school system. And we felt that that was something we were very hesitant to leave. And so the ability to have the online school and still be part of a public school system is priceless.
Learning online allows students to be learning and experience the way so much of the world works today, especially among knowledge workers and information workers, which is such an important part of the economy. These are the types of jobs that we're preparing so many of our students for.
I got to talk to parents and said, this was the salvation for my kid. If I hadn't had this for them, I don't know what would have happened. Kids don't come one size fits all. There has to be a continuum of educational opportunities for children, and online learning is one of those pieces of the puzzle.
That's what makes our country great. It's options. We have the freedom to choose. And to have an additional option can only enhance the quality of public education.
Well, virtual schools are numerous now, and they've flourished over the past 5-6 years, which provide online public courses, and they're free. If you are currently a citizen of the state of Kansas or have been enrolled in a elementary or high school, we have the IQ Academy in Manhattan, Kansas, Lawrence Virtual School in Lawrence, Kansas, the charter school, which is a virtual school, the Smoky Valley Virtual Charter School, and I'm not sure where that's located. I guess Smoky Valley. But Emporia operates one, Turner one, and we even have one that's operating in the state of Kansas from Portland, Oregon. So they are prevalent in our state, and we actually have literally thousands enrolled in each of those schools. You don't have to look far on the commercials on the public television for advertisements for the University of Phoenix, and it's been around since 1976. It's the nation's largest accredited university with 17,000 instructors. It has 128 campuses, and it's a worldwide university, the University of Phoenix, and so it is all online. And we're seeing a move coming from that college orientation now down to the high school. When you look at types of curriculums in those distance learning virtual schools, they vary. You have Keystone High School, which is an accredited independent study, which they have certain adopted curriculums, and those curriculums are in various subject areas, just like you'd find in a public school, math and science and the like. So distance learning, major way kids are learning today. The fastest growing population in alternative school population is the homeschool child. And in 2004, the estimation was 1.7 million, and I've seen in some other studies, research journals, that we're now approaching 2 million children being educated at home, which is a little over 2% of our school-age children. And so it is growing significantly each year as it gets more organized. And there are numerous places to go for help. Almost all of them, again, are online. They are standalone curriculums that a parent could purchase with their own money. But homeschooling has had some pros and cons with it. Let's examine some of those.
Whether it's budget shortages, whether it's teachers needing to be laid off, whether it's school violence, here is the news about public schools, and it's not good news.
I'm a credentialed teacher, so when I asked myself, would I want my children in my classroom? And the answer was no. My world fell apart.
School is about preparing kids for the real world, but then we don't let them get involved in the real world for the full time that they're in these institutions.
I think a lot more parents are saying, boy, this isn't working. We've got to do something different.
I think what we need to do is provide lots of learning opportunities for our kids and help them discover what they're really good at. That's what I really think is the promise of homeschooling.
To me, it's an attitude towards your children, towards how you want to support them in their learning.
People who want to homeschool, really want to, can probably figure out a way to do it.
If you open up your mind a little bit, you can create a customized situation that fits any family.
I really didn't see learning as something that was separate from just life.
Homeschooling isn't about developing a product. It's about the journey.
Well, homeschooling have a number of options. We have online accreditation programs such as Keystone. We have Sassafras Grove, which is a really cool site, even for teachers. Almost anything you'd need to teach almost any subject is free for you, in far as worksheets, as far as a curriculum, as far as just little things that you might need to educate a child at home. The A to Z Home web page is another kind of site where parents go to share types of learning that they found successful with their child. The Home Life Academy, it's all done for you. It is reports. It's even accredited so that your child could play, organized sports in certain states because grades can be given. You have some curriculum that is oriented towards a Christian belief or religious belief. You have some that are oriented towards at-risk types of students with certain disabilities. And you have some that are environmentally oriented or global oriented or multiculturally oriented. So the curriculum that you can choose to expose your child to is vast now that over the past 10 years it's been developed. So typically in the state of Kansas there are two problems with our legislation because we have very few state statutes that regulate it. The NCAA runs into problems evaluating grades and parents to allow kids to play in the secondary in any secondary sports. So typically that's been a problem. Military too, in its initial couple of years, found that homeschool degrees were a little bit inferior. It went through the court system, and since that time the military has changed its tune. But the perceptions of the homeschool child are radically changing. At any rate, as you looked at the alternative school, the charter schools, the vouchers that are coming down the pike, perhaps even in the state of Kansas, the virtual schools and homeschooling, the one-room school that my mother began in Missouri is changing. Our schools are vastly different today, the way we perceive kids.